Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Priyanka Sahai and I'm your host for today. I'm very excited to introduce the next session. Beyond Supply, has India's human capital equation for AI gone askew? Excited to share that this session is recognized as the official pre-summit event of the India AI Summit 2026. This panel session is transcribed and translated to Hindi, leveraging Shrutlekh, a real-time speech-to-text transcription and translation tool developed under the Indian government's BHASHINI initiative. You will see this transcription on the right. You will also see within the session that there will be a QR code that will be flashed. This is for you all to enter any questions you might have for the panelists as this session goes on. The panelists will take the questions at the end of the session. This session is supported by Gates Foundation. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished panel. Amitabh Nag, CEO, Digital India BHASHINI Division, Digital India Corporation, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. Madhukar Yara, CEO, Next Wealth. Aditi Suri, Assistant Professor, IIHS. This session will be moderated by Sujit John, Deputy Resident Editor, Times of India. Over to you, Sujit.
Hi. I kind of live in a slightly very different world in some ways from the topic we have today and the work that some of these people are doing. For some time now, in the last 1 hour, I've been having the most fascinating talk with Madhu and Aditi. And I had so much to learn, and I am hoping a lot of this will come out in the next 1 hour. Like I said, I live in this world of big enterprises, GCCs, those are the big words today. And demand and supply doesn't seem to be a big issue there. There's plenty of work now coming to India through these GCCs. And increasingly, it's a lot of this cutting-edge work around AI. And a lot of global companies want to set up in India. There's plenty of demand. And seriously, I don't see these GCCs complaining much about talent either. I think they seem fairly confident that they can get enough talent in India. But this is a segment which probably needs a little more attention. There is talent. Even in our small towns, we can see youngsters becoming very digitally savvy. And there's been a lot of conversation, NASSCOMs and everybody else have been talking about skilling, so there's a lot of supply side, skills on the supply side, these things emerging. The question is, can we create enough demand at these levels so that, we really need jobs for our people? And how do we create jobs that can lead to some level of mass employment? And AI, of course, is becoming the technology that everybody is talking about. Instead of that becoming a demographic disaster in some sense, how do we make it a real demographic dividend? Madhu, I know you've been working in this area for many years now. You just told me you have centers even in places like Chittoor and Kumbakonam and all of that. You have some 5,000 people right now. Give us an idea, for these new kinds of work that are emerging, how can we create more demand? What is the world thinking? Are they thinking of sending work to India? You work with Amazon, Walmart, Google, I think. Give us a sense of the kind of demand that's coming.
Yeah, can everyone hear me? Does it work? All right. First of all, thank you so much to the Charcha team for organizing this event and inviting me. And thank you, Sujit and Aditi and Amitabh to be part of this panel. Really appreciate that. Maybe a little bit of context for those of you who don't know. I mean, NextWealth is not a very well recognized brand. So we are an organization that focuses on creating employment in small towns. So like Sujit kindly mentioned, we have about 5,000 employees working across 10 different centers that we have across small town India. About 60% of our workforce is women. We are purpose first, for-profit enterprise. So like I said, we create these jobs by selling services to a lot of the global companies in the AI space. Right? So I think the little bit of framing around the question that you put forth, Sujit, and I think the context of some of the work that we're talking about here, when you say a lot of it is people think of the AI data jobs around the data collection, data labeling, data annotation kind of tasks that I think are reasonably, I won't say very well understood, but reasonably people are aware of. And to your question on what the demand picture that we foresee in terms of employability, employment creation, more than employability, I would say, employment creation is centered around a little bit of a nuance in the AI world that some of you might be aware of. There's two terms that are used in, there's a term called workloads that's used a lot. And in AI workloads, there are two types of workloads broadly. There are training workloads and then there are inference workloads. Right? So essentially training workloads are where AI models are getting trained, and inference workloads are where AI models are being used to give an inference on a certain prompt against which the output or the usage of the AI model happens. Right? So where we see the demand picture evolving in, not in the, maybe in the very immediate short term, but definitely in the medium to long term, is we see tremendous upside potential in terms of adoption of AI in the real world, in enterprises and in various other real world applications. We see a tremendous potential upside on the inference of AI being taken up. And one of the less appreciated aspects of AI in the real world is when you start using AI, it fundamentally by its very definition or architecture necessitates a human-in-the-loop activity on the other side as well in terms of either review, verification, validation of the output of the AI model. Right? So I think that segment of AI-driven employment generation is something that the world at large has not yet fully seen. Right? And we believe and hope and believe that that is something that will happen in the coming years and definitely in the coming decades, where as adoption of AI increases, a lot more inference workloads will increase, a lot more verification, validation, review of the output of AI kind of tasks will get created, which will require high volumes of specialized skilled labor, which something that we believe that, we are, India as a country is definitely
describe that level of skill. Or can you help us visualize what exactly the employees do when they do this?
Sure. So just to give an example, right? And this, I'll make it a relatable example. This is not something that we exactly do, though we do some similar tasks. But maybe I'll give one example of what we do as well. But if you take use case like self-driving cars that everybody talks about, right? Waymo, even Tesla, a lot of these things, 𝐈𝐧𝐝𝐢𝐚 and all these things that are going on. What essentially is not as well spoken about, though it's well known in the segment, micro segment of the industry, is there's a warehouse full of remote operators who are essentially sitting and waiting and monitoring the fleet, not necessarily driving the fleet, right? There's AI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting over there. But whenever the model gets stuck or the vehicle gets stuck in some mode, which happens more often than we think, the remote operator takes control and rescues the vehicle and salvages it and puts it back into the regular operating mode, right? So these kind of jobs are far more than we believe they exist. And they are required, right? Most people don't talk about it. They think that AI equates automation. It's not. AI is not deterministic, it's probabilistic. So it's like gambling, right? Very, productivity enhancing gambling, but it's still gambling. So AI is prone to making mistakes, will always make. So these kind of jobs are basically those jobs that will, and like I said, the current awareness is more on the training side where people are creating or collecting data. I'm not talking about those use cases. I'm talking about these use cases which are mission critical, In this case, it's far more mission critical. Obviously, you're talking about an auto on the street. But I'll give you an example of a work that we actually do at NextWealth, which has to do with online KYC. Right? So if you're going through a KYC process, you take a selfie, you take a picture of your Aadhaar card or your driving license and upload it onto various websites. So there's an AI OCR technology that typically verifies those IDs. But then there is a certain portion, right, of that comes to humans for verification, validation, handling corner cases, exceptions. So those jobs are skilled jobs, far more skilled, right? You need someone who's trained and approved to give a KYC digitally, right? So those are the kind of skills and jobs that we're talking about. And we see that as the future of the demand for AI-driven job creation in the coming years.
And skills-wise, you can find
these are highly
people
skillable jobs, right? I mean, these are jobs where you need a raw material, raw talent, and which again, the good news in India, what we are seeing is, so we specifically at NextWealth, we focus on that segment, which are college graduates from tier 3, tier 4 towns. So they have a certain level of awareness and skillability, I would say. So we provide that last mile skillability where they're trained in a matter of weeks, months to be able to do these kind of jobs. Not only that, we also end up doing a lot of, and we can talk about this in some other context maybe, but we end up doing a lot of reskilling as well. Because there's also a space which is evolving rapidly. So while we can skill people for a certain type of job, maybe in a matter of a couple of years or even sometimes quarters, we might have to reskill from them for a different kind of job. But these are definitely very skillable kind of works.
But the newer ones you are saying will not just be just data annotation and all of that, but a little more higher order work.
They'll be far more mission critical to the application of AI in the real world, right?
Okay.
So which increases the inherent expectations from those roles.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Nag, tell me, I mean, you're doing some fascinating work. I hear Bhashini being talked about by a number of, in many contexts and by a number of companies. I've interacted with companies like Sarvam and all that, of course, which are doing a lot of work around language. You created a number of modules for people to use that for in-language contexts. Give us an idea, how can these public goods be used to create more AI-enabled services and jobs?
See, when we started off, you know, in about 2021 or 2022, you know, we actually were looking at a landscape which was totally new for all of us.
Closer? Just hold it a little closer.
Yeah. That landscape was basically, you know, AI was there for a quite long time, but, you know, that landscape was a situation which we had, you know, to see that in an organized way, how do we actually create an AI system which will be transcending the language barrier. That was our primary job. And when we started off, we didn't have enough digital data. We, of course, had AI skills which was totally, you know, scattered. And also the fact that if we have to create a platform which can do large amount of inferencing across the complete geography, you know, we needed a cloud and an inferencing system which was quite large. Now, at different facets, we had actually different types of job which got created, right? As far as digital data is concerned, we went into the field to collect the digital data using an application where people were asked to speak or write about certain pictures, certain situations, and then give the parallel corpus to this, means translate it into another language which they knew. And that is how the digital data was generated to train the model. We are approximately less than 5% of the digital data which is available in the world for all languages combined, you know. So we worked in that. So that's a job which was created, a job definition which was created at that point of time, which was collection of digital data, which was either in the text form or in the voice form or voice to text form, depending upon the requirements which are there. And of course, we also collected visual pictures of the text which was there, which can then be used for OCR or optical character recognition later on. So that's one set of things which are there. Then it comes to the, you know, back end where the data is uploaded. Then it has to be checked and verified whether whatever has been talked about is right or wrong. Many times it is grammatically incorrect, so it has to be corrected. And the entire data needs to be annotated and labeled. So that's a second set of job which we had, which is the value chain, data value chain as we call, had complete creation which was there. The key thing about the both data collection and the data validation and annotation and labeling was that we needed to actually keep the data diverse. So, the collection of data has to be from child to parent communication, to a seller to a buyer communication, to an old person to a younger person communication, and a lot of things which come across with the diversity which is required. Then, of course, the AI models were supposed to be created, so you need high-end tech skills for that, for building the AI model for ground up, for which we collaborated with about 70 research institutes across the country, and there were 2 or 3 reasons for that. One was that so much of AI skills was not available with one institute, so we had to diversify. Second is that the local institute will be able to give better results or better validation or vetting or data as compared to the centralized single institute. So if it is Manipur, it's NIT Manipur, who would have more resources being locally present. So that was the idea by which the 70 Research Institute collaboration was built up. We, of course, divided that into problems of speech as well as text as such. And then when the models got created, then we had the next level of thing, which was what he talked about, the validation of whatever outputs comes across from models. So there is another team which works towards that particular aspect, which is about model tuning and working. Then, which is, and it is a high-end job, because while we are talking about languages here, it could be, for some other domain, it would be something else. As he talked about face authentication, it could be that, we are analyzing 50 X-ray, reports, and then there is a output which has been given by the AI. That needs to be validated. So that needs to be validated by a very senior doctor who will actually say that it is, kind of correct interpretation. Then once the model is built up, then it is deployed on an integral AI system, which is AI ML Ops, which perhaps resembles to quite a lot with respect to the normal IT systems. But yeah, it requires a different skill, so there can be different skills which can be created around it. But then comes the adaptation of the models by various industries and various locations. So since we didn't have digital data, and even if we had digital data, there is always a challenge and a vocabulary which is of your own industry. So, when we are transcribing this session, for example, the vocabulary which we have may not have been seen by the model. It's like a child who hasn't seen those papers, those things which are there. So we now need a people who can actually go down and create the glossaries of the your terminologies and your logs. So for example, if I want to say land records, entire country is having land records, but all of them are in different languages based on the states in which they are in. So you need to create that manpower who will actually be very understanding of the glossary. And that glossary again needs to come back to the system, and then there is again a round of vetting and validation which happens. So that is another set of actions or people which we have to take. Then the art of possibilities have created, which is created by AI, actually leads to many solutions which are hitherto unsaid or unheard, right? We never heard that I will ask a machine through voice that what do I do if there is too much of rain, which crop to sow or reap, whatever, and the machine would be able to answer in its own language. So there is an application portfolio and the voice journey and voice first interactions which happen besides the text interaction. Means there is a general use case of zero FIR getting filed in Tamil Nadu and getting translated to Punjabi based on the the crime and crime scene which is happening. But you are actually looking at text plus voice, which opens up a portfolio of applications and services which are quite different and quite those are in the area of digital inclusion. Those are in the area of bringing people from other side of literacy divide into the system. For example, if we have a digital system which speaks at a tribal area today, we are in a position to have an inclusivity of the tribal population till they, of course, get into the other side of the literacy divide and they have their own language. It also helps us to digitize those languages which are not there. So, that is another portfolio which is there. So now, so it is digital inclusion, it is bringing people from other side of the literacy divide to your field. Obviously, it is transcending the language barrier. And for people like us, it is improving the productivity. For example, creating a report of this session will be much easier when we are transcribing it rather than when we are trying to actually create a note out of it. So then, obviously, you have that complete value chain if you look at it: data collection, annotation, labeling, model creation, vetting and validation, model adaptation, and then application creation, and then, of course, glossary and adaptation to the term. So there are a host of value chain, job profiles which gets created. It's a question how fast we wake up to that and see that this is what is there. So we definitely are trying to tell that this is what our experience has been of deploying AI system. We almost have done 4 billion inferences in our system since we have been launched. We do about 14 million inferences a day. So there are certain things which we have observed and seen that, yes, there would be reskilling of jobs which are there. There will be, exploration of new job profiles which is there, because since the country is not so well digitized, you have actually a great possibility of rural job creation, because most of our knowledge and data also lies there. So that's how it can be.
Do you have any estimate of the number of people who would have you have employed in all of this over the years?
Not so much for us, because
you did it through agencies.
Of course, we work with ecosystem.
You do.
So that getting that figure out from this will be difficult. But the way you see the ecosystem here and otherwise everywhere, we would have perhaps democratized a lot of data work which is happening around this place. And it is not one Bhashini which has got built up. Piggybacking on this, there are a lot of other systems and a lot of other language technology, industry has got built up. And that is what government's mission was, that we not only build a system, but we act as a reference for other applications to get built up. And I think we have reached quite far in that.
And this training thing will continue, this requirement for training, people for training, or will it be more inferencing, as Madhu was also talking about?
See, it's any of the, cycles will have its own crest and turfs, because supposing we imagine a situation that we will get, as a country, we will get completely digitized by, say, 2030. I'm just hazarding a figure. Then perhaps the data collection part of it or annotation labeling jobs would go taper down, and there would be other jobs of adaptation, building new AI systems will come up. So the point is that it is not about, AI will always be somebody who is actually going to assist you. Now, it can assist you by doing your complete job, just as computers do today, many of the things computers do, or it can do a partial job and you validate and verify that. But then there would be a lot of back-end work which is required to build a system which is totally reliable, right? And the reliability has to be continuously tested and validated. The edge cases will always be there, and the edge cases will ensure that we are in that, but we are on our toes to validate and verify the things which AI system is doing.
Okay.
Maybe just to add on one point to that, right? I think one of the things I mentioned earlier was that AI systems by definition are probabilistic, not deterministic. Same way, they're also by definition empirical, meaning that they only learn from the data that they have seen. And one thing that we know as humans is new data gets created, new types of data gets created all the time. Right? So it might not be, to Amitabh's point, it might not be training workloads the same way that it's done today. But even today, there are conversations around inference time learning and things like that. So the corner cases that you find might feed back into the training data for the next revision of the model. So there'll be other pipelines that will get created. So in that way, the training need will always be there, but it might evolve with the changing circumstances.
Got it. Aditi, I mean, trust and reliability, that's what they've been talking about. I mean, and that's part of your research. That's critical for global companies and everybody else, including domestic enterprises, to be able to give jobs to these people. Give us an idea. I mean, is there something that India lacks in terms of bring trust and reliability into this whole process? What should we do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, so let me also give a little bit of context to what I do as I answer this question. So for the last 10 years, I've been looking at how digital platforms have come to impact the services economy, right? And these are all the types of jobs that have just been described. And in doing that, I look at the labor market and how it functions for the worker. So how do you actually find a job in the AI supply chain? How do you find a job in Uber? How do you find a job in urban company? And from the worker's perspective, from the Indian citizen who's going out to find these jobs, what are the things they have to meander through to get to these jobs, and how do they fare in them, right? And when you think about supply chains in that way, what ends up happening for the workers, they have to first be able to identify a job, then be able to present themselves in it, and then be able to kind of prove their productivity and be able to stay in some of these jobs. And the types of jobs that are offered across the digital economy come in a few forms, right? So the example that we just heard now is from NextWealth, is where you are in an office setup, you're in like a business processing outsourcing unit. You have a full-time job, you have a stable income, and within that you're able to do some of the tasks that are part of the AI supply chain. For many other workers, the options that they have are on marketplaces, right? Similar to Amazon or Uber, where you are able to do a data annotation, data labeling task as a piece rate kind of piece of work. And so the way both of these types of workers think about trust and reliability and how employers reach out to them is also quite different. So I'll start to paint the picture and answer your question from that, right? So for any worker who's able to present themselves, they usually end up using word of mouth and networks to get some of these jobs, right? And those networks require a lot of tacit knowledge, and there's not a lot of transparency in how information is shared across those, right? So for us to think about can we get more people in these jobs requires first a lot of formalization of the ways in which information is shared between job availability and the job candidate. And to do that, workers have to be able to articulate their skill. They have to know what the AI supply chain looks like. And in the mix of that, there are a lot of big challenges that come up for those workers. One, you have to really depend on your local NGOs, your local leaders, your family members to do that. Two, they're constantly met with severe amounts of job scams. Right, India has a really strong young population that's quite educated, and that is a huge bonus when we think about how we can support the AI supply chain. But in finding those jobs, they are met with several challenges that really kind of create challenges for them. Right? And these are institutional voids that we see not just because of the AI supply chain, or in this, we see this in manufacturing, we see this in other types of service sector jobs as well. So how you're able to identify yourself, your credibility, your work experience, are kind of these major areas where a lot of challenges around trust and reliability take place for the worker and for the prospective employer, right? And for both of these types of workers, you can come up to an office, at a NextWealth office in a small town, and be able to present yourself. But when it comes to a digital labor platform or a marketplace, that's very hard to do, right? These marketplaces don't have human managers. You often have to sign up on your own through a digital application or a website. And India's digital literacy is very dispersed. So the amount of confidence people have in being able to navigate those forms and systems and identity cards is quite mixed. And in this mix, you see a lot of people drop out. You see women drop out because they are not able to get the kind of jobs they want. And then you see, and those kind of issues kind of really challenge the trust and reliability that we need to make sure that the right people are matched with the right types of jobs.
For global companies, Indian enterprises, for them to have a little more trust and reliability in the whole system? Is there anything by way of suggestions to the government or some legislation? I don't know, what does something like that work?
Yeah, I think often what happens is that for large digital labor platforms, a lot of them operate out of the US, right? Not a lot of them are. In India, we have a very strong BPO market which is able to actually provide physical jobs to people. But when you, for a MNC marketplace, if they're not registered in India, it's very hard for the Indian government to then kind of be able to bring them into local laws. So I think it really starts at a basic level for that. And once we have that, then we can think about the types of incomes people are also able to get from this. And when you have a BPO kind of job, you have a fairly stable income. People are able to earn between 10, 20, 30,000 rupees, depending on the type of skill you have. But when you work for these marketplaces, you're often earning 6 cents for the task you do, right? It's very meager earnings. And a lot of those earnings are earned through very competitive, time-based tasks, which really challenges how individuals are able to do them, where they do them, are they home when they're doing them, are they able to give enough attention, and do they have enough cognitive ability to be able to understand what tasks have been placed on them. And what we've learned from the last 10 years is on the marketplace, that's very broken. And so we're hoping actually that some of these more BPO models are able to actually absorb people better, they're more stable, and the ability to actually move up in that value chain might be stronger in some of these types of jobs.
Okay. You all touched upon it, but can we go deeper into trying to understand how we can create platforms, systems that can take all of this work to our smaller towns? Madhu, you're already there, but I don't know. Tell me, I'm just playing the devil's advocate here. So many years and you're still only 5,000 people. I would have thought you should have been a lot more. What are
Me too.
So what are the challenges, and what are the lessons that you learned, and what advice can you give to the government or authorities or whatever to kind of enable more large-scale operations in these smaller towns?
Sure. So
people are excited, like we discussed. Everybody there seems to be excited about these kinds of jobs. They want to do it, but what will give them trust? Companies that trust to take these jobs there.
Absolutely. So before I answer your question, a couple of things. I don't know how many of you have been following the real-time transcription. I can see it on the screen here. Really beautiful, really fast. It's really nice. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing at BHASHINI, and it's really impressive to see this. So I think coming back to what you asked, Sujit, I think just to frame that a little bit, right? Let's also maybe take a couple of moments to understand what's working in the small towns, right? Why are we, while I do wish we were more at 50,000 than at 5,000, how have we been able to reach 5,000 at least? I think 2-3 things that have changed in the last decade, particularly I would say, is one, just the infrastructure in terms of internet, data, digital. So I had this interesting experience where I was interacting with one of the girls who work with us, and she was very passionately explaining to me how she kind of takes out a lot of fraudulent or duplicate items, types of skirts in Chittoor. And these types of skirts have these flaws, or these attributes have to be added, and so on. And so like, nobody in Chittoor ever wears a skirt. How do you know all this, right? And she was pointed to her phone and said, Instagram, I follow all these channels, I know what's latest fashion, what's in fashion, what's going out of fashion, and so on, right? So I think that Jio, the mobile phone, the screen, has been such an equalizing factor that it is significantly, while it comes with its own set of challenges and so on also, it's also been a very huge leveling factor. The second thing that I was very surprised again when I kind of learned this is most of the employees who work with us in these small towns are actually not from those towns. They all come from little villages anywhere up to 40 kilometers away, right? Daily they commute 40 kilometers, which sounds like a lot for those of us who come from Bangalore. But, for them 40 kilometers is still 40 minutes, right? For us, 4 kilometers is 40 minutes. So Having said that, so you can make out who's from Bangalore, all the smiles. The Delhi guys are like, talk about pollution first. Right? So coming back, I think the infrastructure improvement that's happened, where people are able to kind of collapse those distances, is also something that has been a tremendous change that has happened. I think the third part, which is kind of maybe probably more can be done and more will happen, which has kind of worked well for us, what we've seen positively is, a lot of these places where we operate in these small towns, we partner closely with local entrepreneurs, right? So, for example, there's an entrepreneur who runs a bunch of schools and colleges who's a close partner with us. There's one entrepreneur in Chittoor whose traditional business was to run a nursing home and automotive parts, is now partnering on this kind of BPO kind of tech-enabled services workspace. Another place where we have someone who runs a small steel mill is also kind of investing into this. So I think same way that we have the Narayan Murthis and the FC Kohlis and the Azim Premjis of the IT revolution, I think each of these small towns also needs local entrepreneurship. You should not be depending on Accentures and Capgeminis and Wipros to go create those centers. The local entrepreneurs and creating that ecosystem where the people from there can believe that, hey, I can create a business that can be a tech-enabled services business that I can, make a viable business out of. I think that has a long headroom to go. And as that starts happening, I don't see why not. Why this again, the raw talent capability is there. The demand, as we said, also has some way to mature and materialize. But as that happens, we definitely see this part of it coming out. So I would say that part of it is got to do with, the demand has to scale to, I think it has more headroom to scale for AI-enabled job creation. I think more AI adoption will increase the need for these kind of services. In fact, the area that you mentioned, Sujit, you work closely with GCCs and the like. I think as more GCCs are getting created, there are still certain types of work where the GCC itself should like to outsource. In fact, many of our customers that we work with, while they are multinational companies, on a day-to-day basis, I'm interacting with their GCCs, right? So that kind of, pipeline and value chain and marketplace has to develop. And I think as that develops with local entrepreneurship, people coming up, creating these kind of businesses, which again, there are good examples today, but that has to become the norm, not just examples and anecdotes, but, thousands of those need to happen. And that, I think, will help facilitate a lot of the job creation, taking those jobs to those centers directly.
Domestic enterprises, what interest do they show?
When you say domestic enterprises, how domestic? Like household level domestic?
No. Large enterprises in India. No.
Yeah. And I think, everybody in India has that model. But see, it's one of those things like, it's hard to change. Like, Genpact, NASSCOM has made so much investment, Karnataka has made so much investment in beyond Bangalore initiatives, things like that. They're not really taken root. I think ultimately there's so much you can push, but the pull has to happen. And I think the entrepreneurship is probably one area where the incentives are inherent. You don't need to create artificial incentives, right? If the entrepreneurs start creating businesses in these small towns and tapping into the talent pool, but are able to pull business from the cities and internationally over there, I think that will be a far stronger catalyst, right? Well, various other initiatives can probably play to a lesser extent.
Okay. Ms. Nag, tell me, same question. How do we take this? You're perfectly placed in some sense to take everything to smaller towns, the language initiatives that are, so given that some of them may not be so comfortable with English, and the smaller the town, the more difficult it will be to do in English. So the language initiatives are perfectly placed to take everything to smaller towns. And give us an idea, how is that working right now and what more can be done?
So two facets to it. One is that you take the language initiatives like ours to the villages to actually, proliferate the work there or give the demand there, take it there. So that is one set of activities, which is basically saying that let's see that vetting and validation goes to a rural place because they can vet the face, with their own, in their own language, they will be better off. So that is one of the active things which is obviously can be done, and we need not be actually concentrated on the metros which are there. It needs good telecom links. That is one of the things which we should be looking for. And it needs a kind of awareness of the jobs and the types of jobs which can be done. So that is one of the things which we can do. The second is, as he talked about, which is basically, seeing the transcription. One of the things which we have to look at is that how do I contribute in building the AI system? So it is a service as a product concept which has to come in. So it's important that we build an AI system which works and is able to deliver a value which is acceptable, may not be the best. But there is another facet to it, is that can I basically look at making it best by contributing? So if the transcription is going good, is it best? May not be. So can I now start looking at ways of making it best? And what does it require to make it best? Perhaps carry this transcription to the native places and say that, find the mistake, give me the alternate, and I'll take that input back to the models to train the model. That's a value chain which we are trying hard to actually push in the industry. And if that gets pushed in, then we perhaps have we can dish out multiple, products, AI products or AI systems in the market and get a cycle of improvement going, and that will actually create jobs which are going to be very, very high in number. But for that, we need to accept first that the AI systems are not a service which is getting delivered. It's not a kind of product which is there. It is under a journey which needs constant improvement. And if I start contributing, then I will be in a position to improve it. When I start contributing, of course, I will get paid. So most of the enterprises or most of the people, when we are looking at these AI systems to be used, they start looking at what's the accuracy, what's the things which are going on. So I think that mindset change is what is required, then the people will start investing, and when people will start investing, so okay, now I will adopt the system and I will improve it. So there is an investment which will go in for improvement and which will actually create a lot of jobs which are downstream jobs as well as the high-end jobs which are around.
So that has to come from who, you're saying, that who has to drive that mindset change?
The concept change has to be driven by all. You and I also look at a service, okay, it's not happening, I'll just throw it off. That's the way we do it. So that is, we do it at an individual level, and at an enterprise level also we do the similar activity. We actually go and evaluate and procure a system which is perhaps performing the best without understanding that even if I take a system or we just reject it, okay, today the AI systems are not good, so I will not deploy it. I'll deploy it sometime later. We have missed a golden chance there of picking up the AI system and improving to our need and adapting it to our need as such. So, like, we can do without this transcription. But by deploying it, you have lost nothing. But what you have gained is a content which can be then taken up into multiple phases and multiple places.
You have to keep using it. No? Even in our company, they keep telling us, keep using it. Even if it's something bad, just keep using it. It'll become better over time.
I won't say bad. It has to be acceptable. I agree to that point of a user that it has to improve my productivity. It has to help me somewhere. To that extent, I agree. But the point that I would only use it when I go to the level where I want it to be the best, and perhaps I want to replace 5 manpower before that. Incidentally, wherever we have deployed this in the government, we are telling that your translators are still your assets, because they are supposed to vet and validate what AI output comes in, and they perhaps are the annotators and labelers of the future generation, because otherwise we will not get to the best. We will remain at the cycle where we are in, and we will be looking at some products which are at the 30% level or 60% level or 70% level. And then at some point in time, somebody would have invested somewhere and would come in, and it might not be a totally sovereign product. It would be a different product altogether.
Aditi, same question. Distributed work, ensuring that smaller towns also become part of this whole process. Institutionally, what can be done to ensure that they also are participants in this?
Absolutely. I think the way to kind of approach this is to think about both these workers in different ways, right? I'm coming back to the individual that does this work. And for the people who work from home, who do home-based digital work, I think there are several institutional things that the ecosystem and the public ecosystem has to kind of do well, right? One is that does our national statistics understand home-based workers? We've had this legacy question for the last 70 years, right? We have to start changing our statistical systems to make sure that the workers who do work from home, who are doing this really key important work of building really important sovereign AI systems, are actually acknowledged, right? One, for the productivity that they're offering, and two, for the skills that they actually have and that they are gaining as they are trained within these marketplaces and NGOs to do more high-skilled cognitive work. And so I think it really comes down to reshaping not only how national statistics, but also how the individual is able to articulate what their skill is. Because I think what we need to do is to be able to have, to be able to tie some of these interventions and ideas back to this idea of what do we want out of the jobs that people are doing, right? A lot of these jobs that are being talked about are being done by women. These are their first jobs. These are jobs they're able to do while they have families because they are remote jobs or because they are in smaller towns or closer to their villages. And to encourage that, we need to be able to recognize it, right? So I actually think, can we think of a way in which to find CVs, credentials, job aadhars that allow women to articulate and say they've done this work, they have a skill, and then be able to find the next job, either in a different place in the value chain or outside the value chain, right? Because for me, for a woman to be empowered by having a job, she needs to be able to first accept it, be able to value the money she's getting out of it, and be able to have a higher earning capacity as she leaves that work. And so all the kind of skilling and identity systems that have been missing in the informal economy or how our labor market has functioned is actually where we need to spend our time as the entire ecosystem to try and get this on the right track for the larger outcomes of empowerment, right? We have, of course, the sector that will continue to grow, but to kind of match those domestic human development outcomes with the sector's growth.
How close are we to a job aadhar?
We are getting there. I think a lot of these verifications of skill and identity exist in closed platform ecosystems. So right now, if you work for an MNC marketplace doing this work, that company knows very well what your productivity is and what your skill level is, right? As NextWealth would know for their individual employees. Now the point is, can we democratize it? Can we open it so that it becomes acceptable to other people? Can that woman go ahead and share a credential in a way that it's trusted by the next employer? Is it in a format that is not that cannot be tampered? So is it not a Word document or a PDF, but actually a digital artifact that you can exchange in a secure way? I think we're quite close to be able to get to that. And so that, I think, is one place where we actually can see some concrete changes in the next year or couple of months.
Okay, wonderful. Some questions here. This one is to Aditi and Madhu. In your view, what white-collar jobs will AI definitely not be able to do after, say, 5 years and, say, 10 years?
I'm going to let you take that one first.
All right. So, see, I think I'll punt on that question a little bit. Right? So, I was just discussing this before the session and another conversation I was having. So, I think the whole debate around how jobs will get disrupted because of AI is, on the one hand, I think it has a certain, there's an implicit challenge that I think people broadly, the conversation has missed out on. And I'll reference history as an example, right? So, like everybody talks about how AI is such a transformative technology, like industrial revolution, like agricultural revolution, and so on. And if you were to go back and look at it, just take agricultural revolution as an example. When that happened, people didn't did not embrace the agricultural revolution because they wanted to become carpenters or weavers or masons or anything like that, right? They embraced the agricultural revolution because it just saved them the trouble of going and picking food every single day and at the risk of eating something poisonous or getting bitten by a snake or whatever. Then, as that happened, people started settling down. Then they needed a home, they needed tools, they needed clothes, and then other professions came out of that. So if you ask me what type of jobs, so I kind of see AI as a similar thing. Even if you take more recently the digital revolution, many of us here are young enough to, or old enough to kind of know this. Not too long ago, you could not imagine that an influencer would be a job type, right? So I think what jobs will remain, what jobs will not remain, I think I would rather punt on that question. I don't know what will happen. One thing that I do strongly believe in is that there will be net more jobs 5 years from now than there are today, right? Because that's what, again, history has constantly proven to us. So at that level, I'm kind of happy to live with that assumption and, let the people who are kind of innovating on the edges and creating new applications with AI kind of determine what will actually be the new kinds of jobs.
You said inferencing jobs, lots will emerge, you said.
Sorry?
No? Inferencing a lot of jobs.
Inferencing related jobs. Like again, just to maybe pick one example, we spoke about how there'll be remote operators of these vehicles. But today they are cars, tomorrow they could be drones, right? Yeah, as a percentage of number of drivers who are physically driving cars, the number of people needed to manage that same fleet of cars might be far fewer if you use AI plus some remote operators. But the absolute number of vehicles on the road or in the air, if you count drones, will be an order of multiple higher. So the net jobs of remote operators of vehicles might actually be much larger than the number of driver jobs that will get disrupted. Right? So some of these things are things where, the productivity enhancement and the unlock that will happen in terms of number of use cases that will get materialized is far higher. I think most of us are kind of thinking of, okay, today I'm doing this work, tomorrow I don't need to do it. But that's a very, today or in history, backward-centric view of looking at job creation and the impact. I think what the future holds is something which probably, I tend to choose the more optimistic and
and I think this question about will jobs get displaced or lost comes from this popular imagination that we are going to be able to create artificial general intelligence. And I hope, like for the audience here, you've been able to pass the difference between two very concrete examples of what AI systems look like, as opposed to AGI, right? AGI is kind of the big threat that kind of gets speculated upon for why jobs will be displaced. I think all the examples we've heard today keep the human in the loop, and both you have said as very senior leaders in the field that people will continue to be important to validate, to check, to infer how these systems are being created. And I think that's the reframing that all of us really have to take away. When you hear these questions about displacement, you have to think about what's the actual technology that's being talked about. I think in all of our minds, we either think of LLMs or AGI as the big threat. There are many other systems that are being created that are very grounded, that are very empirical, where we may not see a complete displacement of jobs. And I think that is, because I am in the realm of shaping people's minds and knowledge, this is, I think, a real takeaway that all of us should take back.
Samudaya is something that you're going to start or started already? That's a lot of jobs being created there, is it?
See, jobs are, as she said, AGI are still not a threat. AGI outputs have to be vetted. AGI outputs have to be verified as well. So while we are increasing our productivity to do something which is, not so routine, you are actually making, yourself more educated as well as moving up the value chain as far as knowledge is concerned. So the concern should not be whether we lose the job, whether we are losing the job. How do we upskill ourselves is more concerning factor. Because, if AI is looking at, again, I take the example of X-ray reports. If AI is looking at 50 X-ray reports and then giving you an interpretation, and you are as a human have to validate that particular report, then you have to be actually super intelligent, right? So there is a upwards in terms of experience, upwards in terms of the way we are looking at things. So, value of experience, value of the more things you know, all these are going to be very, very important to go for. So it's a question of upskilling and reskilling ourselves rather than looking at how do we, are we losing jobs?
There's another question for all of you. Quickly, if AI is going to reshape every industry, what one reform should India urgently implement in school education to prepare a future-ready workforce? One reform in school education. Who wants to take a shot?
Maybe I can start as the person who is doing the teaching work. You know, often what we educate young learners on, they're unable to articulate it. If you speak to a woman who has a college education and you ask her if she's working, if she's in a formal office with a lanyard and in a white collar job, she'll be able to articulate her skills. But anyone below that who's in the service sector, who is being able to either work in a small enterprise or work as a domestic worker or work in a similar field, they don't often articulate that they work or what their skills are or how much cognitive ability they put into doing those jobs. So I actually think self-articulation, self-confidence, being able to understand your competencies, being able to credentialize them, being able to put in a shape to them will actually help reduce this gap between there are jobs that exist in our country. We just have a major mismatch in how to find them. And I think that really starts when you're a young person. It really starts by acknowledging what your knowledge is. It starts by acknowledging that you might be getting skilled in maths, but you might be really good at something else. And I don't think our school system is able to capture that in young people. And you see those problems as they move into the workforce. And you can keep skilling people, but if they're not able to articulate it and tell their employer, this is what I do, it's a huge challenge.
So maybe I'll like to share a small anecdote, right, my personal experience. I grew up, I had an aunt growing up who worked very hard to get herself certified as a typist and took up a job in a semi-government enterprise as a typist. And at some point, the typist jobs kind of went away. And she was, she got moved around a couple of departments, but eventually just kind of quasi-forced into a VRS, and then she never worked after that, right? So, see, I think the perspective on what I feel like, so that is on one side. On the other side, we all kind of, more anecdotally, like life expectancy is much longer than it used to be. Again, my grandfather passed away a couple of weeks back at the age of 93, I think. That was not an age that as many people lived up to see even a couple of decades back as they do now. So I think when you're talking about education, children, I think the notion of studying for one career, retiring out of that same career, and then kind of living out their life in retirement is probably going to change quite significantly. I think during the course of one lifespan, we might go through multiple careers, right? And that's where I think what today we are calling skilling, reskilling, it's almost an afterthought, right? Is there a way that, like today, if again, my daughter is in college, she just joined college earlier this year, but her 10th and 11th grade, I'd forgotten everything, but it was still the same stuff that I learned in 10th and 11th, so syllabus hasn't changed that much. So to what extent, what are we really training them? In a world which is changing so rapidly, in a much longer lifespan, if you have to be productively employable or productive in some capacity over a much longer period, what are the kind of thought processes that you need? Maybe the skill is to be able to learn, skill is to be able to adapt. So those are some thoughts that come to mind in terms of what, if I had to go back and what my younger daughter can learn, I'd probably focus on that.
Now you want to take a shot?
When we are basically looking at, I think I'll basically touch on two topics, and one is that, the division between the various disciplines is blurring. Everything perhaps today is tech. Everything is perhaps, interlinked to the other thing which you're doing, right? So, means there was a time when we say this is technology, not my baby, and the rest of it is my baby, or management is my baby. So that is one thing. So, while that is happening, there is also a challenge where we are losing specializations, because of this, things being burning, and it's like a overgeneralization of, that's the right word, overgeneralization of things. So that's where there has to be a focus in the school education, that while there are general things which are horizontal, there is a vertical specialization, and there has to be extreme, emphasis on R&D and ever-growing things which are supposed to be taken up. Second is about what is good in knowledge and what is good in language. See, our challenge is that we often start off in our journey by saying that if I'm able to, I'm good in language, that means I'm good in knowledge. That is something which differentiation has to come out. Today also the AGIs might be good in language, but they may not be good in knowledge. And our assumption is that they are good in knowledge. So somehow we will have to bring up this thing that, okay, these two are different qualities and attributes of people, and they have to be utilized in that way. We actually are visualizing the things in the same particular fashion. So, can a driver have a resume is something which we were discussing, and this was basically at Ministry of Youth, Department of Youth Affairs, and they have a portal called My Bharat. And they were basically looking at blue-collar jobs, people registering themselves and then creating a kind of skill or other registries. So can a driver have a resume? So the driver's resume is basically a 4 or a 5-liner, naam, pita ka naam, and what is there. But then we're trying to say that can he be more conversational in his aspects? That can he say that I was, till 12th class I studied here, then I suddenly found that my family conditions were not good enough. I started working. I acquired this particular license. Then I went to somebody who was basically, employed me for 2 years, but he encouraged me to go to college again. These are the conversations which we want to basically put it in so that we know that the other attributes are also captured. And that takes you further, means that gives the confidence to the employer perhaps to build the skills further or reskill. The adaptability is well known. So there is some amount of thinking process which is required to actually see that we are, capturing the attribute of the child well in advance at a very, young age, so that we are able to counsel them to a right career, which can actually take them to a far greater heights rather than everybody becoming a teacher or everybody becoming a doctor or everybody becoming an engineer. Today there are a lot more jobs and avenues which are available.
A lot more jobs, absolutely. That's also what Aditi was talking about, credentialing and all of that. No, absolutely. I know we are out of time. Chetna must be getting worried. Thank you all so much. I mean, the work that Bhashini is doing is phenomenal. It can only lead to a lot more jobs across the country. Madhu and team have demonstrated what is possible in these smaller towns. And Aditi, of course, talked about job credentialing and a lot of things that can be implemented which can help distribute jobs across the country. Thank you all so much for a great discussion, and you've given us a lot of hope. Thank you.